Hello, I'm Toycat, and welcome back to the second channel, Geopolitical Videos. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about the 2020 election, because as you all do know, most news outlets have called the race. This person is going to be president in 2021, and this person is going to be leaving the White House and no longer be president as of January 2021, barring some shenanigans. But leaving that to the side, a lot of people's first question is like, oh yeah, what about that British Trump though? He has to leave now too, right? That's how that works. And ignoring that you're talking about two different countries of two different electoral systems, and implying that one result has to have an effect on the other, which it doesn't. The next election in the UK isn't till 2024, most likely. But ignoring that, let's just brush that to the side. Let's talk about the fact that, like, these aren't really the same character at all. A lot of people like to characterize as like, oh yeah, they're two vaguely right-wing leaders with wacky hair, and therefore they're basically the same problem. Everyone knows, right-wing, wacky hair, that's the only two political defining characteristics. And in today's video, I want to talk about how right and left-wing, especially right and left-wing parties, America's a famous example. Most Europeans who follow American politics are like, actually, they're kind of both right of center, in my opinion. It's fascism and fascism light if you're an extreme left-wing person. But the truth is that the definition of left and right is going, especially when it comes to parties at the very least, is going to change based on country. I mean, sure, we can all agree that, the communists of the hammers and the sickles, they're left of center somewhere. Regardless of your country, probably. But although we can agree on that for the most part, the political parties are going to represent the people, and the people obviously are going to vary from country to country because inevitably there's going to be so many differences. So first of all, let's talk about just to go back to this one. Like, okay, so they're actually the same anyway though, because wacky hair, right of center, the populist. I mean, they're political outsiders, right, who came in and vowed to change the system. And again, if we actually look into Boris Johnson's history, you can see how he was not only, I'm scrolling through the entire thing right now, he became an MP in 2001 for the Conservative seat in Oxfordshire. That's a pretty politically safe bet. And then he won a second election in that seat. Then he became Mayor of London, the largest city in the UK, which is, kind of crazy in my opinion. And then he became Foreign Secretary, and then he became Prime Minister. That is not an outsider. That is a political maneuver from position to position to position, slowly gaining power and slowly, gaining influence until he became eventually the prime minister by a leadership election. That is a hugely different story, and ignoring the fact also that, like, oh yeah, he only became prime minister in 2019. Probably he's going to stay till 2024. Who knows beyond that? Versus this person who's like, 2016 to 2020. They don't even overlap in terms, but again, the reason people say it is because when you look at, cross-country, issues, you're like, oh yeah, I identify the one that vaguely represents me. Like, oh yeah, if I'm right in the UK, I'm gonna recognize the right in the United States, or vice versa. But honestly, that's not actually true in the slightest. If we actually look at the exit polls or whatever, you can see that the way it works is there isn't just a vague right wing and a left wing. There's a lot of different issues that people decide to vote on. So if you are a Trump voter, let's put it this way: people who care most about the economy are most likely to be Trump voters. People who care mostly about healthcare are most likely to be Biden voters. People who care about Supreme Court appointments are pretty much in the middle. Abortion, pretty much in the middle. Foreign policy, pretty much in the middle. It's interesting, actually, that Trump has a slight lead in people who think foreign policy is important, and this is because there's actually huge swaths of the electorate. The reason that the election vote changes so wildly from election to election is because there are people who have their own preconceived biases and thoughts and whatever they want the world to be, and it's a leader who has to unite those people across the various issues. I mean, in this case, there was a coalition of people who think healthcare and Supreme Court appointments and the coronavirus outbreak are super, super important. I think racial justice and climate change are two other ones that are named as Biden things, versus the coalition of people who think the economy is important, versus people who think foreign policy is important. And by small margins, I guess people who abortion on the right side are very, they think it's life's on the line. So when you start to stack these issues up against each other, that's how an election is really taking place. When you just think of it as like, oh yeah, it's left and right, and then it all comes down to the campaign, then I think you're part of the problem if you think that the only reason people choose who they vote for is based on ads. Is that how you chose who you're going to vote for? I don't necessarily think so. I think, again, if I'm a big economy voter, then it's like, oh man, we need to get some good plans from both sides. If I'm a big healthcare voter, if there is a reliable and trustworthy, and we think it's actually going to happen, plan from the Red Party, maybe that's enough to make you switch. That's a lot of the smart political operations that actually happen that make successful right or left wing campaigns. That's how in 2016 maybe someone managed to win an election despite being a huge outsider. But let's rather than just talking about like, oh yeah, so the way it really works is people have these different views and they're kind of varying. Why is it then that like how does that prove that it's different from country to country? I mean, in the UK, lots of people care about the economy. In the UK, lots of people care about healthcare. I mean, we don't care about this one so much because I mean. I could talk about the UK Supreme Court sometime, but it's a very interesting thing. But it's like, those are things in the UK, so surely it's all exactly the same. And the answer is that, like, actually, most of how policy works, again, assuming that you're not electing a king, if I was going to elect King Bernie or King Trump, maybe we would get some wild things. But you have to work within political apparatuses, and for the most part, that means there is only so much you can achieve. So in reality, the status quo, where things are right now, is where every party's going to start, and then you start to make things more right-wing or more left-wing. In America, even if you make things pretty left, even if you push bill after bill after bill, making the country more and more left-leaning for the next 4 years, in reality, you would get a country, in my opinion, that is still to the right of center in many of places. And to prove this one of the few things that I think Trump actually got achieved that people are happy for or against, depending on your side, is tax cuts, right? And if we look through, hypothetically, a list of countries by tax rates, you can see that the tax cuts in the United States were mostly to corporation tax. This is for corporations, what they pay on their profits, fun fact. But most corporations just don't put their profits in the country with the high tax rates. That's why it wanted to be lower. But let's ignore that. Let's just say this is the tax on corporations. And it used to be 35%, higher than Venezuela, which I think is crazy. And then it was lowered in the United States by a very right-wing president down to 21%. You can see over here. Here is the United States, plus 0 to 12%, depending on the state. But the fact is, in the United States, you pay 21% corporation tax, which is seen as this crazy right-wing tax cut. It's giving billions, to rich people. Man, I can't believe that they did that. That is a very right-wing policy. Except if you look at the UK, where we've been for quite some time, if you look at our tax rate, it's down here at 19%. So, a left-wing, if in the UK you took our tax rate to 21%, that would be a left-wing position. It's the exact same policy. Change corporate tax rate to 21%, but yeah, it's kind of very different, right? And that's because they're in different starting points. Even if we ignore the pedantic, and also, by the way, isn't it interesting that, if you were gonna, if you took the American tax rate down, it's giving money to billionaires, but if you took our tax rate up, it'd be taking money from billionaires. And it's like, wait a minute, isn't any tax rate at any level going to be taking money from people, rich and poor? Isn't that what taxes fundamentally are doing? Why do we act when we lower taxes, that's giving money to billionaires? Especially because it's only if it's a 10% decrease in taxes, it's if you're giving billions away to people, that means that they were already giving you tens of billions, whatever, Semantics on taxes. This is my favorite part of the whole channel here. But let's talk about a more direct comparison then, shall we? Because I've actually, interesting enough, if you look at here is the UK elections from 2010, I found something quite interesting. If you look at it, it's oh yeah, all three parties right here promised to get rid of the deficit. I mean, by different amounts and different levels. It was a across the political spectrum idea that the deficit probably needs to be fixed because it was a huge thing back in 2010. And if we compare that to oh yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure that America's deficit, oh god, no one cares about that. The two-party platforms were keep the deficit roughly where it is or increase the deficit. There wasn't really much of that. America is just on a level now. Again, since Bill Clinton in 1997, all right, I think there's last year there. Since the late 1990s, America's just been on a let's just buy things now and let future people pay for it. It's probably not going to be a problem, though. That's political consensus in America. In the UK, the political census is very different, and therefore something, are these all left-wing parties by comparison? Are these all right-wing parties? I mean, fiscal responsibility is usually a right-wing concern. It just isn't one in America. But, or at least it's not a right-wing party concern, because again, the parties are just reaching out to different voters. In America, they've concluded that no one cares about the deficit enough to vote based on it, whereas in the UK, everyone cares about it. It was seen as a thing. Also, if we look through this, right, if we look at the left-wing tax Like so Labour is the left-wing party in the UK. It's like, oh yeah, they wanted to have a 50% tax rate for earners over 150,000. Again, if we actually compare that to the left wing in the United States, it's like increase it to 39.6%. That is a huge difference. 39.6% is lower than ours right now. If you were to change our tax rate in that way, what I'm just trying to say right here is that the positions are going to change a lot. And what better way to prove this than by going to Canada and going to the United States? I wanted to, because I'm talking about corporations, I'm talking about top tax rates. Let's talk about a nice 250,000, like just personalizing that amount of money. If you're in Canada, your tax rate is going to be 39.58% in Ontario. It actually gets a lot higher in certain provinces. It's crazy how high, a $250,000, like sure, you're doing pretty well for yourself. But the fact that depending on where you live, I've looked into this because I was like, oh, could spend a year in Canada or something. Could not. And I was like, wow, taxes there on all brackets of income. I'm just using $250,000 as a nice thing. Or maybe this is Toy income reveal. It definitely isn't. I wish it was. But as you can see right here, okay, so here is the United States. Even in the most left-wing part of the United States, the tax rate, as you can see, is effectively 36.29%. In the most right-wing, the most low-tax part of Canada that I could find, Alberta, it's 35.57. Actually, wait, that's less. Wait, total tax, 88,000. Total tax, 90,000. Oh, I found there is one region where that's less, except because of currency conversion, $250,000 in America is actually more like 350,000 in Canada. But still, there is the most left-leaning place, a place that has county, state, and federal taxes applied, is going to be the same as the lowest in Canada. If you look at the 2019 Canada party thing, if we look at their left wing, the Liberals, and their right wing, the Conservatives, it's again, carbon tax, which is usually a right-leaning idea to fix climate change. Right wing is against it, and the left wing is for it. Even the Green is even more for it. If we look at if we look at deficits, for instance, oh yeah, it's a right and left issue over there, as you can see, despite the fact that all parties in the UK, regardless of position, don't want it, and all parties in America, regardless of position, do want it. In Canada, it is a right-left divide issue. If we look at healthcare, though, something that is a kind of issue in some places, oh yeah, every party, for the most part, that I can find is saying increase healthcare funding. The very slightest against it is from the Populist Party that's like, you know what, let's make provinces and territories fully responsible for funding it, which is kind of a difference, you could argue. If we look at taxes, though, you can see that Canada wants to lower their taxes by 1.25% over 3 years, which would bring their rates, as we can see right over here, to, again, if we go back to Ontario, which is the most populous province, and we go to a New York City, or yeah, let's go to New York City, which I think is it might be even higher taxes. I could be wrong. But if we just go to a random place, I don't know, Texas for fun. Where in Texas? Texas City, Texas. Your tax rate is 28% on that same income, versus in Ontario, it's 39%. You'd have to lower that by 10% to get a similar tax policy. And oh, what's that? All of a sudden, it's oh yeah, because different starting positions will alter how that is seen. If you lowered this tax rate by 11%, you would be giving money to rich people making $250,000 a year. If you were to increase taxes in this place, you would be stealing people's money. Their hard-earned cash is going straight to the government. And it's yeah, that's a thing that's going to change based on where you're at. I could go down this on a trillion different levels. But what I'm trying to say is that the majority of policies are going to have to vary based on where you are right now. The fact that you can look at America cutting their wrong thing. The fact that you can look at America cutting their tax rate to something which is higher than most European countries, including Finland, by the way. The fact that they cut their tax rate and gave money to billionaires, it's only 0.4% lower than Sweden. But the fact that you can call that a right-wing tax cut is because of the different position. I mean, if you're used to 35%, then it seems like it's left-wing to increase it and right-wing to decrease it. Despite the fact that there is, if I'm not mistaken, besides literally American Samoa, which isn't a fair comparison, besides the Seychelles, Suriname, and Canada, there was no other country which had a higher rate. There was no real alternative to decreasing that corporate tax rate. So, was that really... What I'm trying to say right here is the various positions they're going to take. If we look at all the positions of the 2020 election, it's like, you know what? Is that both of the parties have pretty much the same position on abortion, which is, we'll leave that to the Supreme Court, which admittedly, I guess both parties get to decide. But even the Supreme Court has the opinion of like, you can't overturn a ruling without like a good position on, but people will vote on it anyway. But like they seem very different on that. Like if you look at foreign policy, it's like, both parties had this kind of similar thing. If we look at the coronavirus outbreak and anything else here, what I'm trying to say with all of this video is that if you look at the United States of America, if you look at China, their leader right now is maybe considered a left of center guy. Maybe. I don't know for sure. But one of the other CCP officials, Deng Xiaoping, is the one who's like generally considered to have brought market economy reforms, but he brought market economy reforms to the communist China. Is he a right-wing character or is he a left-wing character? Is it hard to say because China's communist, but also they're not in all the ways that like people who have like this left-wing strict ideology say that China isn't communist. The one country that is communist and succeeding is disowned by left-wing groups because it's not particularly left-wing. And that's because the pure ideologies that if you look into the purest type of communism, can we find that? Here's the Chinese Communist Party. They are a key thing for where are we gonna find this somewhere? Oh god, far left. The far left generally can be deemed to exist, and the far right can generally be deemed to exist in ideas. And ideas are great. Ideas are where you get policies from. But in terms of what governments actually do, it's not far left and far right. It's taking the existing thing and moving it in a direction. Without bloody revolution, which maybe it's going to sound like I'm far left terrorism is a fun thing. But without bloody revolution, which I'm not an advocate for. I think it's bad, but sure. That's how you change things in an instant. Most of the time, unless you're willing to have the majority of people be upended and be in a less pleasant situation than they are right now, you move things forwards policy by policy. It takes a long time, and that's why a lot of people who are on the far left and the far right feel disenfranchised. They're like, I don't like that it's going to take a while to get my things done. Why, if we're going to dismantle capitalism or have ethnic cleansing or forced assimilation or national religions, dominant cultures, or let's see what some other ones, or far left militant organizations meant to abolish capitalist systems and the upper ruling classes. If we don't have those things, what's the point in even going out there? But the truth is you shape a country slowly but surely. The fact that over a long enough period of time, you can look at the Chinese Communist Party and you could see them sliding to the right. They're literally called the Chinese Communist Party. The fact that you could look at that slowly happening says that even if it even works in a one-party state where there is one party that rules all and kind of decides everything, don't you think maybe it can work in a free and healthy democracy? If your ideas, be they abolish, insert governmental agency, or create new governmental agency, one universal gun care. There we go. Whatever your ideas are, they can happen slowly over time. That's what happens over a long period of time. Maybe like the long period of time that Boris Johnson has been in political positions. If you actually look at his voting record, for instance, you can see some stuff like, actually, it turns out, on free, whatever I'm trying to say right here is that over a long enough period of time, any positions can change to the position where something that was unthinkable. If you don't know, we had a referendum on the EU, and I don't mean this referendum on the EU. I mean in 1975, apparently. In 1975, we had an election. Those were the results. In the meantime, because of, from both sides, just using the EU as a scapegoat, well, rightfully so, blaming the EU, let's say. But if you were to hold a vote in 1976, same result. 1977, similar result. Hold it every year, and at some point, there's the split where it goes from a country that is overwhelmingly pro-EU to a country that is overwhelmingly anti-EU, with the exception of parts of Scotland, or most of Scotland, I should say, and Northern Ireland, and London, and a few other metropolitan areas. Most of the United Kingdom became just in this time period against it, despite the fact that the only parts that were against it in the first place were parts of Scotland. Interestingly enough, wow, things sure are interesting. Yes. Also, London was like pretty split on the issue. If you look right here, but now they must remain. The people's ideas shift, and it's happening all the time everywhere. Your ideas, your opinions are shifting. I hope if you're a normal human being who has changing ideas, because the world is changing, and that's what can lead to referendums. That's what can lead to elections where, 4 years ago, people decided this guy would be good. 4 years later, they decided, not by much, but they decided no, at least, certain swing states did. If you're in Oklahoma, you didn't decide anything. Also, before we go, just as an interesting thing, because to prove that, a lot of people look at just the presidential elections, they're like, oh yeah, so there's the right-wing people, there's the left-wing people, but it's really not about that. Like, people literally do look at individual places, individual people in America, and we can prove that because here is Maine. 52% of the people in Maine voted for Joe Biden. So 52% of people are left-wing. I don't know about that. If we look at the Senate, happened the exact same day. Same people voting. Like, it's not even like, same place, but different people. Same exact people, for the most part, who voted by a 52 to 42 margin for a Republican, because the Republican was more centrist in this case, I believe. I think she's the only one who voted against the Supreme Court nominee, if you want a little bit of history there. But those same people voted for this. If we look at Georgia is a state that is going to be voting blue, it looks like, for the most part. But at the same time, they voted red in the Senate. As you can see right here, red person, 49%, blue person, 47%. People, the reason there is a Republican Party is because of the fact that it represents, if not 50% or 55%, then close to 50% of people in most of the rural states. The key issue is not that it's not that they weren't left wing enough or they weren't right wing enough. It's about, do those policies help, or do they appeal to people? Do they actually seem like they're going to help the people that live in the affected places? Again, if you're religious people, heavily for the Reds. Educated people, it seems, again, like Colorado's the most educated state, looks like it's on the blue side. Rural people, as you can see, looking at certain races, the various divides that are happening are going to be more in a big country, because that's what politics is. It's about convincing people, ultimately, in a democratic system at least, it's about convincing people to vote for you. And those people will vote for you if they have something that they believe you on, because being believable is kind of an important thing. That's why we don't trust them politicians unless they're Donald Trump or Joe Biden. But, they have to trust you on the thing, and then they have to believe it's going to help them, or that it's good for the country in some way. Because, admittedly, you probably don't think that racial justice will help you if you're on the left, but you think you'll make the country a better place. And maybe making the country a better place is a thing you do self-servingly. But all I'm trying to say right here is America's interesting. Also, no one's spoken about this, but this is fascinating. In Arkansas, it's not red versus blue, it's red versus yellow, the Libertarians. And the Libertarians won quite a few counties, it looks like. What's the deal with that? I'd love to know. There's a trillion political curiosities. I don't think anyone can understand even all of America, let alone all of the world. So when someone says to you, America has two right-wing parties, it's like, well, actually, no, that's not how that works at all. America has a first-past-the-post system and an electoral college and a system that really encourages two parties. As a result, there is a somewhere left-of-center coalition and a somewhere right-of-center coalition. The left generally stays close to the center. The right generally strays around a lot, depending on the president. But that doesn't mean that they're both right-wing. Maybe in the objective international sense that both parties are capitalist, but you know what? In the UK, all the parties are capitalist too. No, wait, I'm going to quickly check. Seize the means of production is not on the page. Wait, means of... Okay, wait. Institute communism. Oh, wait. Ooh, community. It's almost communism. I guess the Blue Party likes communism in the UK. No, because there's a lot of things that... Oh, look how many... I guess all three parties are in favor of community, which is a form of communism. Checkmate. Actually, the Red Party wanted more prison places. See, justice is seen as a... And the right-wing party has been cutting police. So justice is a left-wing issue in the UK. It isn't, but it fits into the coalitions, right? Because things are different between countries. Who would have figured? And that's why this has, even ignoring the fact that they're different election processes, this guy is very fundamentally different to this guy. Will he be out by 2024? It's actually kind of likely. You know, just for fun here. This video should have been over by now, but just for fun. So this is our Prime Minister of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland and the leader of the Conservative Party since 2019. However, unlike the President, who almost always goes out because of an election, because there are no term limits in the UK, there's no thing like that. And because the Prime Minister is just the person who leads the leading party, if he was ousted as leader of the Conservative Party, he would be ousted, most likely, as Prime Minister. And that's kind of interesting, because if you look at leaders of the Conservative Party, or let's just say Prime Ministers of the UK, I think of the last 6 Prime Ministers, only 2 were voted out by the public. The other ones, wait, let's see if we can find a nice list in here somewhere. Bottom Premiership, lists of Prime Ministers by different... Okay, timeline of Prime Ministers of the United Kingdom. Here we go. Here's a fun little list. And if we look at this list kind of closely, you can see, like, oh yeah, last 6 Prime Ministers, Boris Johnson hasn't lost an election, but I mean, like, who knows? Theresa May didn't lose she lost an election, but she didn't lose power because of that. She lost power because she was ousted as leader. David Cameron stood down as leader, didn't lose an election. Gordon Brown lost an election. Tony Blair stood down as leader, didn't lose an election. John Major lost an election, but Margaret Thatcher did not. She just stood down and was replaced. And therefore, of the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, of the last 7 leaders, only 2 have actually have been lost because of the public. Whereas if you look at America, you have to go all the way back to the 70s, Gerald Ford or something, for the time that happened. Very different systems, because do you know what? My final point of this video, did you know that different countries are different? That's right, I've got a whole geography channel. You'd expect I wouldn't have to explain this to people who apparently watch this channel. But did you know that different countries are different? The United Kingdom is a different place to Turkey and Iraq, not actually Mongolia. I mean, I know you guys are expecting this from me. Also, you know, just in case you're like, oh, the last 4 years were the worst thing of my life. I mean, Trump ruined everything. Yeah, imagine, yeah, it must be real hard, right? Must have been really hard, like, knowing that, like, oh yeah, things are so hard. People's lives are literally on the line. Yeah, that's America. The cool thing about the United States actually is the fact that, like, regardless of who's in power, even if you think this guy's going to be the worst president ever, the fact that, like, the constitutional balance, whatever, means that, like, the amount of, you're not electing kings, you're electing people who are heading the executive branch. So, like, the amount of, like, damage they could do, even if they were the worst leader and they wanted to hurt America, probably couldn't do too much of it. But even then, the fact that it's so wealthy and so powerful that there is zero chance of this happening to you in the next 4 or even 40 years, and you should feel lucky about that. Or, again, I'm going to go back to my more key message here. Just a key thing. I know you've probably forgotten by now. It's been 30 seconds. This is a geography channel. But did you guys know that Armenia, this country over here, let's zoom in a little bit more. Google Maps has been... There we go. Did you know Armenia is a different place to America? I can actually see the confusion there. Like, America, Armenia. Oh, sounds similar. You might get them mixed up. Different countries. This is... Actually, not... No, I should end. But did you know... I've heard that a lot of people in, like, Georgia, the state, were really riled up when Russia invaded Georgia. They're like, I'm gonna stop them. I'm gonna get in my truck. And I'm gonna... Whatever. You know, this video's over. Different countries at different places with different political situations, and that's why you might be somewhere to the right of the General Secretary of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, but also somewhere to the left of one of these 2 guys. But that doesn't mean that you're a centrist. It just means you're somewhere on the political spectrum of your country, probably. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. Thank you for watching. I hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.